Hey ladies, it's Kate and Judy, and we want to share with you a very taboo subject for women, we believe, but a really important conversation for us as women entrepreneurs. And that conversation is around receiving. You know, we are, as women, I would say, and especially for you moms out there, we as women are wired to give. We take care of everybody else, and we are there for everybody else.
And the truth of it is really, honestly, that's what nature intended
Yep.
originally.
We've really been wired naturally for this. And
Exactly.
then you add about 10,000 years of the history of women on top of that,
Yes.
where it's been patterned into our DNA.
So we don't stand a chance.
And so, you know, what we've really, the conversation that we've been in is really recognizing how little we as women have really expected.
And how we haven't been trained to expect. I mean, we're talking, tens of thousands of years.
Yeah.
We have not been trained to, it's not literally been trained into us to expect.
And also how little we have actually required to live on.
And it's the moms that are always the ones that have been, made the food stretch out, or have really taken care of, made so much more out of so little over history, throughout history.
And so
that's how we've survived.
It's how we've survived.
Yeah.
And my grandmother, for example, my paternal grandmother, she was born in the Bronx in New York City, and she was the second youngest kid to 13 children. Both of her parents were immigrants from Ireland, and so she was, right after her younger brother was born, she was about 4 years old, and her youngest brother was born, so he was the 13th child, and her father was killed in a subway accident. And so here is her mother, who has 13 children. They are poor beyond what most of us could possibly imagine now. They live in the Bronx, and here's this woman, my great-grandmother, her husband has been killed, and she has to raise 13 children on her own. And then cut to a few years later, and the Great Depression hits, and what was already an impossibly hard situation got so much harder. And so all of my grandmother's siblings, including my grandmother, they all went out and they got jobs from a very young age, and the mother did what she did to survive. And so my grandmother, who I didn't know all that well because she was more elderly when I was born, but I remember that she would save all of the little ends of the bars of soap around the house, and she would wait and put them all together to basically fashion one extra bar of soap in the house. And so this was her habit and her pattern. This is what she learned that you had to do to survive.
Yeah. And the truth of it is that most of us are still acting like we're in survival mode. Do you recognize that?
That's really powerful.
It really, really is, that we're still, because it's so patterned into us to be in that sort of a mindset. Now, there's nothing, especially with, the ecology as it is today, there's surely nothing wrong to not be wasteful.
Absolutely. And also, if you look at my grandmother, your parents, great grandparents, the lineage that has been passed down to us, when we look at what these individuals were actually experiencing, let's say around World War II, around the Great Depression, that legitimately these individuals were in fact living in survival. And so that is what they learned for themselves and their lives.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with that, other than when we today, as modern women who have the opportunities, we have the desires, most importantly, that we do, that we are still behaving and acting as if we are in survival.
And that honestly, that something is wrong about our desires. I don't know about you, but I grew up feeling like, I knew I wanted certain things, and in my generation, I was of the baby. I am of the baby boomer generation. So my parents experienced World War II, and so they experienced having to really scrimp and to save, and so desiring for more was something that was kind of like hush hush.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
it really was, and so it was something to be proud of being thrifty, to be proud of not desiring more. And so we've got this push pull going on because today's world is different. You know, you were born in a different generation,
Yep.
and the
yet,
opportunities have been greater for you than they were for me, as mine were greater for me than my mother.
yeah.
And yet
I think that it's a bit of a universal story that we as women have difficulty receiving. We have difficulty really admitting the big desires that we have. And in our experience, and again, this is not necessarily popular to talk about, but that our desires actually require a great amount of money to fund our dreams, to fund our desires.
And they require support. And support means receiving.
Yeah.
And this is really the conversation about how good are any of us at receiving. Because many of us did not receive that kind of support as children from, one parent or the other or both, or even our teachers or religious institutions, because of that it was somewhat, again, it's like to be strong and to do it on your own was admired.
And I think that there is a bit of the reason that we often won't even acknowledge our true desires, like the virtuous desires of giving to those less fortunate, or maybe it is investing in the business, so that's a virtuous desire, or having a sturdy car, or whatever that is, that is somehow acceptable.
Yeah. But
some of our true desires as women, whether they are to travel, to have a bit of luxury in our lives, to live in a home that feels really expansive to us,
that we love,
to shop. I mean, this is something that I've even judged myself for loving beautiful things in my life.
Well, and it was honestly, it was taught to me early on as a little girl that my mom would take us shopping, and we'd come home with the bags excited, and then she said, but don't show them to your father. So we had to tuck them away and hide them. And I think, sadly, I kind of passed that on to you too. It's like these family patterns.
Like the word that we've eliminated is splurge.
Right.
We feel like we're splurging when we are honestly even just getting some of our, just the step up from our basic needs being
just
done.
going to Starbucks and getting a cup of coffee, a latte. It's like a splurge.
A splurge.
Like, okay, so that is no longer on our vocabulary.
And so, the status quo really judges desiring more than what we just need to scrape by. And so therefore we judge ourselves. And so we found that this is not necessarily the most popular topic for us as women, and that it actually is a little bit taboo. But we really want to blow the lid off of this because we feel like this conversation around receiving is so vital for us to grow our businesses, to grow ourselves as women, and to really leave the impact and the legacy that we desire to leave.
And one of the things too that you and I have talked about, Kate, is about the law of attraction and this misunderstanding about it. That and one of the pieces is that the true law of attraction has two components to it. It's desire, and then it's expectation. And so when we think about it, if we have not actually expected. Well, first of all, if we have not been in the habit of receiving, then therefore we haven't expected,
for sure,
to anything that we might desire to receive.
And I mean, the first problem is that we're not desiring something, and then we're certainly not expecting to actually receive it, and we're blocking the receiving off.
Yeah.
And the way that we see that this really shows up for us as women in our businesses is a lack of receiving clients, a lack of receiving income, a lack of receiving support. You know, if we have gotten into the habit of not receiving support, oftentimes the way this first showed up was in our family of origin, and then we might attract friends or partners into our lives who continue to perpetuate this self-fulfilling prophecy of not receiving support. You know,
So it's going to show up in every area of our lives.
and we talk a lot about the rule books that we, each one of us create our own rule books from when we're very young, and we carry our rules into our adulthood until we look at those rules to see if they are in fact supportive to what we are endeavoring to create and really the life that we desire to create. We get the opportunity to reevaluate those rules and actually create new rules. A rule that you learned and then therefore taught to me was that debt is bad. Right. That you don't carry any debt month to month on your credit card. Whatever you put on your credit card, you have to be responsible enough to pay that off at the end of each month.
And guess where I learned that?
I can't even imagine.
Exactly. And what we have found is that as women entrepreneurs, this was something that was a real shift for me a handful of years ago, in full transparency, that what I had to really, I had to come to Jesus moment with myself, that if I was actually going to embrace being an entrepreneur, it wasn't going to come from a bank loan, or it wasn't going to be coming from the cash that I had on hand.
Or it's not.
I needed to invest in myself. Yeah. And so this is a whole misconception that I think that we have. Like, where does this funding come from? We need to be trained. We need to invest in ourselves. There's a whole line of technology that we need to learn.
Oh my God.
Of this.
The learning curve is huge.
It's huge.
And so in our family, what was part of the rule book is that if you want to go to grad school, that's totally fine. You can take out a loan, even if it's up to like $100,000. Totally fine, not an issue. But if you want to invest, put something like a new program on a credit card.
Like oh my God.
That's
it's like, waking up in the middle of the night, guilt, like, oh my God, what did I do? Until we change that rule.
Yep.
And it's sometimes those rules, when you change them, like, it doesn't just happen overnight, that we have to work with that. Yeah. And this is really, it's the thinking, it's the belief. So it gets down into those core beliefs.
Yep.
That if I really believe in the depths of my subconscious mind that debt cannot be, had on a credit card for a purpose of becoming an entrepreneur. I mean, I don't know who made that rule up, but somehow, then me investing in myself was a challenge. And so I needed to really change that thinking. You were breaking
the family rules.
I was
breaking those family contracts can be pretty anxiety producing, at the very least, we can say.
And I'm going to say that the breaking of the family rules is a little bit between you and me, because we are the trailblazers in our family.
We're the white sheep.
We're the white sheep. Yes, we're not the black, we're the white sheep. And that, it doesn't get to be anybody else's business unless we choose.
Yeah. So again, going back to this receiving thing, the way that it shows up for us in our businesses, it's not receiving clients, income, support. How many times have we deflected praise, not received praise of like, oh, I love your new jacket. Oh, I got it on sale. Like, we just deflect it right off. That's something that we as women do constantly.
And how do we know that? Because we've done it on occasion.
Another big one is if we, growing up, were not seen or heard or acknowledged, or, we've seen other circumstances where maybe there's been verbal or physical abuse in a family, and it was actually safer to not be seen or not be heard, to not receive that visibility. That one of the biggest places that we see this lack of receiving showing up is by being invisible. And so this is, something that to us is really fascinating. Because, you hear this conversation as entrepreneurs out there all the time of like, I'm posting in Facebook groups every day. I'm doing videos and I'm not receiving, it's crickets.
And
Like,
the
I'm not
attention.
getting any likes. I'm not getting any comments. And then there are other people out there that are posting basically the same content, and they're getting all of this attention.
And all of a sudden, they're the most, popular thing since white bread. That dates me.
Yeah, indeed.
It does.
Yeah. What are you, a baby boomer or something?
Oh, yes, I am. Yeah.
And so this lack of visibility is something that, particularly as women, we must overcome.
Well,
and what this really comes down to
mhm.
is the energy.
That's what I was going to say. It's energetic.
Yeah.
It's the energetic piece, because if we are not in the frequency of receiving, first of all, and secondly, we don't believe that perhaps we even deserve it. We don't even necessarily know if we believe it or not.
Yeah.
It's just one of those subconscious things that we are really in this, that our frequency is not going to attract the visibility. Mm-hmm. And again, we could be doing Facebook posts, we can be doing mailers, we can be doing, standing on our head and dancing, the tutu.
Speaking engagements,
exactly.
People aren't showing up the way that we had hoped for, expected.
And we just are not going to get seen.
Yeah. So
this is really about changing the belief system underneath there, recognizing that what is really going on. Mm-hmm. And, if you believe in your heart of the universal principles, if you believe that the universe is abundant, if you believe in all of the possibilities that the universe has to share with us.
Which you probably do if you're on this...
Absolutely.
Watching this video with us.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth of it is that if you really, to your bones, believe in universal law and principle, and you believe in the law of attraction, you get that it's desire and expectation, and that you have these big desires for yourself. And yet, if it's not showing up, if you're not receiving the clients, the income, the attention, mm-hmm. the support, the praise, whatever those pieces are that are not showing up for you, what's happening is that your natural state is in fact abundance. You are meant to receive all of these things that we've just talked about. And yet if you're not receiving them, then there has to be some sort of block that's going on within you, that's as if you are holding back the waves of the ocean that are coming in on top of you.
And that is powerful.
So really just acknowledge how powerful you are. And
you get to choose. Yeah. You get to choose. That's how powerful you are. And what we're really about is really creating a whole new story for women. A story where we can step up to becoming the powerful women that we have been sent here to be the trailblazers, to have new conversations, to carry on to our future generations that we really are meant for bigger things. And it's not, again, about competing with the men. It's stepping up as women, that we are really here to create a new story for women all around the planet.
And what we really believe is that at this time in history, there has never been a more perfect or more important time for us as women to step up, to own our power, and to actually harness it in a way that brings forth that which we desire. That there's never been a more important time for us to be seen and to be heard and to be using our voices, because what we know is that you have the message, the salve, the healing that is required on this planet, that you are meant to be the visionary trailblazer and transformational agent, helping other people to free themselves.
Because let's just face it, as a woman, you already do that in your own family. That's who you are. Women are really the glue that holds the family together. And we as women, as you know, throughout the planet can be, as Kay, as you said, I love the salve to really heal what needs to be healed.
Yeah. And so we are taking a stand to create a new story for women all around the world. And we invite you to be a part of that.
Absolutely.
And it starts with changing our stories. It starts with changing what we are willing to receive, what we are willing to allow in, how good we allow our lives to become.
And allowing ourselves to desire, and allowing ourselves to expect to receive our desires.
Yeah.
And
So
we
with that,
wish that for you
yeah,
and every other woman on this planet.
lots of love.
Lots of love. Bye-bye.